President Obama announcing just in the last hour to keep 9,800 troops in Afghanistan for most of the next year. Ohio Senator Rob Portman on the cost of the Afghanistan war. Well, we know that the human toll has been enormous and the economic toll, but apparently President Obama, this is as close as we've come to a mea culpa on his Middle East war strategy.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think it's an acknowledgement that what happened in Iraq and now in Syria is a disaster, and we can't do it again. So we left Iraq precipitously. Now ISIS has about 1/3 of the territory. So in Afghanistan, hopefully he'll do it differently. And look, I think this is a start. It's a lot better than what he was going to do. One of the concerns, Charles, is we're in a tougher position in Afghanistan than we would be because we told the bad guys, we told the enemies what we were doing and when we were going to withdraw. That was a mistake. It has emboldened them. Now I hope the president keeps his word and keeps those troops there for intelligence purposes, for special forces against the growing al-Qaeda threat there, and some say an ISIS threat there, but also to train up the Afghan troops.
But are we going to spend our time trying to recapture lost territory? I mean, we know that this large city was taken down by the Taliban, and I'm pretty sure that was what tilted or was the inflection point, at least with President Obama. But he says that the nature of the mission has not changed. Should the nature of the mission change?
Well, I think you have to rely on the Afghan troops to do that. Kunduz apparently is kind of in flux right now, so at least they've made some progress against the Taliban after
right, but the point is that it was lost, that it fell to the Taliban in a quote-unquote surprise attack.
Right.
I mean, how many times do we have to hear that these are surprise attacks?
Yeah.
Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban, they're on the march. Don't be surprised. They're going to come after you.
Yeah, and by the way, very similar to what we see with ISIS. So you have a relatively small number of fighters. In the case of ISIS, coming in from Syria, here you have a relatively small number of Taliban taking over this town. Total surprise. Part of the problem is that, frankly, we've pulled back on our U.S. intelligence, so we're not helping, whether it's, in this case, the Afghan army or in the other case, the Iraqi army. And that's one thing we got to do. Look, we're not going to be there forever, but we got to be sure that there's a transition. We can't just pull out precipitously, and we've seen what happens in Iraq.
What's the litmus test for these transitions? We spent $1 billion maybe training the Iraqi army, only to watch them take off their uniforms and flee in fear when they saw that black ISIS flag coming around the bend. How do we know when they're ready?
Well, look, they greatly outnumbered them, but the problem is we pulled out, including pulling out all of our trainers. We allowed them to go back, and these were the Shia,
But when do we know that they can do it on their own? When do we know that, hey, these guys aren't afraid, they're not intimidated, or won't be intimidated?
That should be based on the military commanders on the ground, not a political decision. And the problem was the president made a campaign commitment on Iraq. He followed the campaign pledge rather than what the commanders on the ground were telling him. So they weren't ready. I mean, obviously, they weren't ready. And we allowed the government there in Iraq to continue to shun the Sunnis, and a lot of the Sunni troops, of course, left, and this is one of the problems. So, look, it's about doing the right thing that the commanders on the ground tell you to do.
But again, I think we get back to the issue, Senator, and it does sound like maybe you're with President Obama in the respect that we should be in a containment business rather than in the offensive recapturing business. Should we try to recapture?
Absolutely, but we should not be on the front lines of that. We should have the
We should be
troops
orchestrating that from above with our intelligence, perhaps.
That's why we need the trainers there, we need the intelligence there, we need the special forces there. And I think that, that's not what he's done. He didn't do that in Iraq. You look at what's happened in Syria, drawing red lines and not honoring them. And now in Afghanistan, at least they're starting to make a little change in policy because of the disasters we've seen in Iraq and Syria.
It's so heartbreaking because of the investment we've already made.
Absolutely.
We've made a huge monetary investment, but the blood of so many young, beautiful Americans over there who were killed, who were maimed, to retreat and defeat. I don't think it's responsible. I know they try to throw these buzzwords on it. I felt it was retreat. I thought it was irresponsible, and we're seeing the results of it.
Totally agree. It's very disheartening. I've got veterans in my office, and as they look at this, they've been over there. It's really discouraging for them. We're squandering some of the gains that we made. Again, not going to be there forever, but let's have a transition.
Want to transition then, use piggyback off that word, a little bit in Syria, because what I see happening, as a layman, but, a real interested layman, perhaps a major assault on Aleppo, the largest city in Syria, historically the turning point I mean, the Crusaders fought there a couple of times. We had Muslim invaders, Ottoman, the French. It has been one of the key cities in the Middle East for any power broker. Vladimir Putin bringing Cubans, Iranian, Syrian troops to make a major assault on that town. I don't care what you think about them. I think it would be an amazing move if they were to recapture Aleppo. What would it do, though? What would it mean for the Middle East in general?
Well, first of all, I think that Vladimir Putin's focus here is saving Assad. And so if he is successful in Aleppo, it will be because Assad's troops, and as you say, the Iranians, including Quds forces, I understand, are in the area, will be helping to save Assad. Now, Assad created all these problems.
Sure.
Assad did kill over 200,000
Sure.
of his own people.
Sure.
So you're right, from a military point of view, it would be impressive. But we, as the United States of America, need a strategy. What's our strategy? If it's to get rid of Assad, and again, regardless of what Vladimir Putin says, Assad created these issues.
There's no doubt about it. We know Assad and his father were maniacal, the most evil kind of leaders ever, whether they were dropping nerve gas or these barrel bombs full of gasoline.
Yeah.
They've been indiscriminately killing their own people for decades. But if they recapture Aleppo, he may be in there to stay.
Well, if they recapture it, I think it'll be a military victory. You're absolutely right, and we'll see. My concern, again, is lack of a strategy.
Yeah, mine too.
We're talking about deconflicting rather than what is our strategy. We need to be on the offense.
Senator Portman, thank you very much.
Charles, great
You're
to see
one
you
of my
again.
favorites. I know you're thinking maybe it ain't